How y'all folks doing today? It's good to be back here. This is my second time being at your convention. I was just here this time last year. I got my free shirt. I got a free shirt last year too. It's my favorite airport shirt. So thank you for that. It's always worn around here. So I did want to speak a little bit about the speakers we had in here earlier because they said a lot of things that really made a lot of sense to me. First, I want to talk a little bit about Defend the Guard. As the speakers mentioned, we are moving legislation forward in my state of Georgia. I was really proud to go speak to that committee about why we needed to bring our troops home, why we need to stop the warfare state, and why it's important for our states to exercise their 10th Amendment rights and restricting the warfare state in these undeclared wars. And so I unabashedly support Defend the Guard, and I think each and every one of you should get out there and support it here in Missouri. It is a worthwhile cause, and it is something that can really change the lives of thousands and thousands of members of our military. And just a few weeks ago, 3 members of the Georgia National Guard were killed in Jordan in an attack that happened to them. Now, some people are using this as an excuse to try to go to war with Iran. I'm using this as a reason why those troops should have never been there to begin with, and we should have had Defend the Guard legislation passed. And your next speaker was also fantastic, speaking about the evils of the death penalty. Let me tell you this right now. If we empower the state to control people's bodies enough where they can cease your life, they can decide to end your life, they can control every other aspect of your life. You are giving up your life when you allow the state to take the lives of other people using the death penalty. And so I have long been a death penalty, ending the death penalty advocate. And I just have a simple question to ask you guys. She mentioned how Europe is no longer exporting these drugs to kill people using lethal injection anymore. Well, that's because they don't have the death penalty in Europe. And we're really in most of the rest of the world. If you put on a graph, you'll see most of the nations of the world don't have a death penalty, and then you'll see United States, Iran, North Korea, and China, and Saudi Arabia. Let me just ask you a question. Which neighborhood of nations would you rather our policy reside in? I think it's better for us to join the rest of the world in ending the death penalty once and for all federally. And if I am our candidate for president, I'll speak that message outward to every single American voter. Now on to the stump speech. My name is Chase Oliver. I do want to be our Libertarian candidate for president because I believe we have a golden opportunity in 2024. A recent poll showed that 63% of American voters are willing to vote for somebody who is not Donald Trump or Joe Biden if they want to vote for that person. And so that is our job as libertarians, is to present a message that resonates with those voters, that makes them feel good about voting for the libertarian and not just against the Republicans or Democrats. Because frankly, we are not just going to be a protest vote this time around. There are other independents in this process, and protest votes will go to any one of them, including us. We cannot rely on just being a protest vote in 2024. And so I have tasked myself with being a candidate who is busy, who's out there on the road. If you follow me on social media, you follow our website, you follow what we're doing, you see that I have been all over the country, including to Missouri twice before here today. I've been to 44 states so far, on our way to all 50 before our national convention. And I believe it's important to do that. 2 reasons. 1, I found out no libertarian candidate for president pre or post nomination has ever campaigned in all 50 states, and I think that's a damn shame, and I wanted to break that glass ceiling for our party. But secondly, it's important that voters in every single state in the country right now know that libertarians are running, that there's a libertarian running for president, that we're not being ignored by the primary process and the Nikki Haley's and Donald Trump's and Joe Biden's of the world. No, we are out there right now speaking to voters. And if we can put that message forward, we will grow our base. And so I'm going to be a busy, hardworking presidential candidate for this party, putting our principles forward in the best way possible. To do that, we can't just talk about what we want to talk about, right? We can't just talk about our pet projects. We have to talk about the most important things to the voters. Number 1, they say it all the time, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy. We have to speak to the economic worries and fears that each and every American family is feeling on their kitchen table right now, seeing the cost of living increase, seeing the cost of rent increase. And what is leading that inflation the most? If you watch MSNBC or listen to Democrats, they'll tell you it's corporate greed. Corporate greed's what's causing this. But let me ask you a question. Were corporations not greedy 5 years ago? Did corporations get 5% more greedy this year and 5% less greedy next year? No, that's not how inflation works. Inflation is driven by the fact that our government prints trillions of dollars a year to pay for debts and deficits they don't pay for, and we pay for it through the hidden tax of inflation. Every single one of you, even if your money's in a savings account, it's being eaten away by the state who prints trillions of dollars a year. And why? Why? To subjugate you, to steal your rights, and to fight wars and kill innocent people overseas. That's why. Is that a moral reason to be robbing you of your wealth? I don't think so. I think we need to have a better message. First and foremost, we need to balance our federal budget. We need to get it under control and stop treating that as trillions of dollars and put inflation down. And, it sounds crazy, right? Balance a budget. That sounds like a radical idea in 2024. 25 years ago, that was the rational idea. That's what both major parties were fighting to do, balance a budget. And we had the largest explosion in the middle class in our history. Those two things are not unrelated, and it's not very hard to get ourselves back to that fiscal spending. If we just can cut ourselves back to pre-COVID levels of spending, at the current revenue generation we're making, we're pretty much balanced, you guys. It's not very hard to do. The only thing Washington, D.C. lacks from its Congress and its president is the will to get it done. And if we elect a libertarian, we will have the will in Washington, D.C. to balance our budget and to get inflation under control for every single American family. The other thing we're seeing about in the news all the time is immigration. It's, of course, concerning to everyone. Now, I will be the first to say we have a crisis on our southern border. But it's not a crisis created by immigrants. It's a crisis created by government because they're getting in the way of the free movement of people and the free market of people seeking jobs and labor. And there's also the welfare state, too, which we can also fight both of those things at the same time. But what we have to do is stop the crime that we're seeing perpetrated by government on our southern border. I just traveled to the border recently, Nogales, Arizona, and El Paso, Texas. I spoke to the sheriff of Nogales. If you've never met an anarchist who's a sheriff, go down to Nogales. He's awesome. But he'll be the first to tell you there's nothing to fear from immigrants. I've lived here my entire life. These are peaceful, hardworking people who just want to come here for the most part. People ask him, you're a sheriff on the border. Don't you have to deal with drug cartel shootouts all the time? He said, hell no. I'm more worried about when I travel to Tucson on the weekend than we get mugged. That's the truth. Immigrants are not scary. They're our neighbors. They're our coworkers. I go to church with immigrants. I've worked alongside immigrants for years. And frankly, it's something that we have to dispel in this country. That immigrants are bad. That we're being invaded. We're not being invaded. We're including new people into the marketplace. We're growing the economic pie. And let's be frank, every one of us pretty much came here from somewhere else. I just got back from Ellis Island in New York. 40% of Americans can trace their ancestry through that room, through the registry room of Ellis Island. 4 in 10. We do not need to pull up the ladder behind the next generation of people who want to help make this country great, put down their roots and start an American dream. So I say we need Ellis Island-style immigration at our southern border. Come through a point of entry, declare who you are. We can do a quick background check to make sure you're not really wanted for anything bad. And you come on right on through and get to work. And that will allow people to come and go as they please. That will allow seasonal labor on our farms. From Georgia, it is our largest industry, agriculture. And so it will allow those workers to come and work seasonally and go back home with their money to see their families. And quit dividing people. I think we need that kind of compassion. But that's policy stuff. Policy is great. You can really ask me about any policy you want. I'm going to take some questions in a minute, and I'll probably give you a pretty good libertarian boilerplate answer because I am a diehard libertarian. But I want to tell you how I became one. I became a libertarian because I opposed war. I started out in politics because I opposed war. Because 9/11 happened when I was in high school, and I saw people I went to school with going to go fight in wars that I knew much of it was based on lies, particularly the war in Iraq, that we manipulated intelligence to bring ourselves into war. So I became an anti-war advocate. I didn't know about the Libertarian Party. But because George Bush was a Republican, well, I guess I'm a Democrat. That's how I identified myself. Now, I was a Democrat who loved guns, who hated taxes, and that got me a lot of weird looks. But because they weren't George Bush, that's where I landed. And I worked within that party for years as an anti-war activist. And in 2008, we were all excited because the guy we got nominated for our candidate said things like, I'm going to end the wars. I'm going to stop the drones. I'm going to close Gitmo. I'm going to actually talk to our enemies without precondition. And he walked back every single one of those promises. He lied to us. And in fact, escalated the wars, escalated the drones. Gitmo is still open today. And did he ever talk to any of our enemies without precondition? Hell no, he didn't. And so when Barack Obama abandoned the anti-war movement, I abandoned the Democratic Party. And lo and behold, in 2010, I was wandering around the Atlanta Pride Festival, and there was the Libertarian Party of Georgia tent. I was trying to read what it sounded like, Librarian Party, what's that? And as I'm looking over, a man waved me into the tent. He said, come over here, come over here. That man was John Mons. He was running for governor of Georgia in 2010. If you don't know who John Mons is, he is a certified badass radical libertarian. And he starts talking to me. Hey, you want to take this world's smallest political quiz? I said, no, that doesn't sound like fun. And he said, well, before you leave, I want to know what political issue matters to you the most. What speaks to you the most? And I bet the libertarians can help you. And I'll never forget it. I said, I oppose the war on terror and the war in Iraq with every fiber of my being. And he said, welcome home. That was the atmosphere that brought me into this party. He didn't question my economics. He said, welcome home. You're an anti-war person. You belong here because we're the party of peace. Sit here and talk with us. I'm going to tell you how your anti-war views relate to the message of liberty. That's what I want to do for millions of disaffected voters. I want to be an evangelical libertarian. I want to put down our metaphorical revival tent, and I want to bring people in that tent with whatever issue it is that speaks to them and connect them to liberty. You believe the death penalty is immoral and it's wrong that the state puts people down? Welcome home. You believe it's wrong that we send our military men overseas to fight and die and drop bombs on children and innocent people? Welcome home. You think it's a crime how we treat immigrants who just want to come here and work and start their American dream? Welcome home. You're tired of the government abusing your property, stealing it from you through eminent domain or through property taxes? Welcome home. We can connect each and every one of those voters to the greater libertarian philosophy if we're evangelical in our nature of liberty. If we're getting out there and speaking the good news and bringing them in. That's what I want to do as our candidate for president. Because I know so many people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? I sure am. And I know there's millions of people just like us. And we're going to have wins in 2024, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, we're going to win in 2024. Now, winning the White House, that might be a hill to climb. But there's a lot of other victories we can win as a Libertarian Party if we want a well-run, passionate, and energetic presidential campaign. I have 4 metrics of victory for my campaign. 1, how many states can I help win or achieve ballot access? So it makes it easier for libertarians, just like the people in this room, to get up and run for office like those folks who said they wanted to run here earlier. How many states can we do that? How many states can we earn major party status that gets us increased visibility from media and other people? That's what happened in Iowa in 2022. And because of that, and because I worked a lot in the state and campaigned and got some media, I got invited to speak at the Iowa State Fair on the Des Moines Register soapbox. Up to that point, there has never been a candidate for president who wasn't a Republican or a Democrat who's gotten to do that. That's what I did for our party. I put us on a level playing field with a 2-party system. And that's what major party status can do if we win it in states across the country. Third, I'm going to identify as many winnable, electable libertarian races across the country as I can. And as your candidate for president, I will be unyielding in my devotion to get out there and knock on the doors, pound the pavement, and help push them across the finish line to victory. And lastly, and this is the most important metric of victory, I want to double our party's membership and, this is the most important part, hold it for the next 4 years. Because every 4 years we run a campaign for president that gets new energy, new enthusiasm, and new interest in the Libertarian Party, and it drops off. So I'm telling you right now, if I'm our candidate for president, my job does not end in November 2024. It really just gets started. Because I will spend the next 4 years helping those people, anybody that came to this campaign interested, maintain that, connect them to their state party, connect them to their local affiliate, and if they don't have a local affiliate, help give them the processes and means to start one. That is how we grow our party from the foundation up, from the grassroots. Because, ladies and gentlemen, change begins at the grassroots. And that's what we need in this party, is a foundation that can build upon. So in 4 years, we're going to have twice as many donors, twice as many activists, twice as many door knockers, and hopefully twice as many candidates who are in a position to win. That is my promise to you as a candidate. This is not about me. This is about the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian message. And that is something I hold dear to me because it was something that since 2010 has made sense to me. It's made sense of a senseless world. And we can do that for millions of people. But I cannot do this alone. This campaign is not about me. It's about all of us. And I need your help. I need your help to spread this message. I need your help as delegates to this party. If you're going to be going to the national convention, I want to earn your support. If you're a delegate today, I want to get on a phone call with you. I want to talk to you. If I can't talk to you one-on-one today, we will be talking on the phone at some point. I need your help as a volunteer. We have an army of volunteers, over 300 in fact, who are doing such great work across the country. Let me tell you right now, I would not be participating in the free and equal debates later on this month if it wasn't for my volunteers, who sent out 40,000 text messages on the final day and helped keep us in the top 6 and allowed us to speak on a debate stage where I'm going to be on the debate stage with Cornel West, Robert Kennedy, Jill Stein, and a couple other socialists. Me and Lars Mapstead will be up there together defending the principles of liberty. And I'm so proud to do that. But it's because of the hard work of this campaign. And lastly, I do need your donor support. This is the part where you ask for money, people. I do it every time I travel. I need your help to push this message forward. I need your help to put fuel in the economic engine that's going to, or the freedom engine that's going to help millions of people discover a new message for liberty. I want to say thank you so much for allowing me to speak this message, allowing me to speak to each and every one of you. But now I want to listen to you. I want to hear your questions and concerns and tell you how our campaign is going to transform this country and help achieve liberty everywhere. But I always end all of my speeches and all of my remarks with the same thing. As we leave here today, I wish you all three things: peace, love, and liberty. Thank you very much. Hey, that's what I'm saying, man. I can take some time. Does anybody have any questions? Policy related, campaign related, heck, personal related. I will answer any kind of questions you have for me. Yes, sir.
So someone reaches out to your campaign, says they want to volunteer, want to help. What's the first thing you send? Like, I wouldn't live in Georgia or anywhere near a lot of your other volunteers. What could I do to help your campaign if I were to email you? What would you send me?
So if you jumped in as a volunteer right now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have our volunteer coordinator, Michelle McCutcheon. She was actually once the national membership coordinator of the party. She's going to connect you, get you into our Slack, get you to sign your standard NDA, all that good stuff to get you started and get involved. From then on, we have weekly meetings. We have, we have different teams. We have like a comms team that does great work, social media team that does great work. We have somebody who's going to start managing, who's actually going to be a field director to start managing volunteers as they do stuff across the country and help with tablings and things like this. So whatever it is you feel might be your best way to help the campaign, we're going to try to plug you into that. We're going to find a great team for you to work with, and I can say I have an awesome, like I said, we have an awesome volunteer director. We also have an awesome comms director. Her name's Kelsey Lyons. She's amazing. We got a great social media team, Sarah. We got a great IT team who's helping to help us stretch our dollars the best way possible. One great example is the way we're using information in our marketing. We're using direct targeted ad marketing right now. We are using this because it's very easy in the 21st century to find likely libertarians or likely libertarian delegate voters. And right now, I have had people who I've been to their conventions, and just yesterday got home and they started watching the Roku. And what was the ad that came up? A Chase Oliver for President ad. Because that's what we're doing, is we're targeting those voters. We're able to do that at a fraction of a cost of what a media buy would be. And so as we move forward in the campaign, that's what we're going to continue doing, is identifying likely voters and beaming the message directly to them. And those who just are not going to pay attention to the message, why are we spending money on them? Spend money on those who are going to get the vote out. And so we have lots of great ways for volunteers to get involved, and I would love for you to get involved. Jump on in, let Michelle meet with you, get on Slack, and you'll see a great community of people. I'm also on the call every week, at least for a few minutes, BSing about some story that happened to me during the week. So if you want to hear that, jump on our weekly volunteer calls.
Where do they go to volunteer?
They go to votechaseoliver.com and you click the Get Involved link. Thank you for that question, sir. That is from a lovely guy in the back there. I think his name is Steve Dosbach. He's my campaign manager or something. But go to votechaseoliver.com and click the Get Involved link. You got a question, sir? And speaking of guerrilla campaigning, I've done a little bit of it myself. Actually, I was doing a campaign thing through California, and I was going through San Francisco, and this great libertarian named Starchild was helping me campaign. Have any of y'all ever met Starchild? So I said, Starchild, what are we doing? And Starchild said, we're going to do a pop-up rally at a BART station. I was like, okay, what kind of a pop-up rally is this? Is this just going to be me standing on a soapbox with a megaphone? You bet your ass it was exactly what I was doing. I was standing up there with a megaphone while we put chalk art all over the area. We drew chalk art, Chase Oliver for President, votechaseoliver.com, support immigration. This is a very immigrant-heavy area. And we had signs in Spanish. We were stapling literature to signposts, all that kind of good stuff. And so we got to do like 2.5 hours of guerrilla campaigning. I actually like doing that stuff because I can do it in shorts and a t-shirt, not in a suit. So yes, let's do more of that. Let's encourage more people to get out there and do those kinds of things. Absolutely. Yes, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's several people running for libertarian nomination. Why are you better than me?
Well, I don't like to speak ill of my other candidates because we got other great candidates running. But I will say the metrics of this campaign are speaking for itself. We've gotten the most donations from the most donors across the country. We've traveled the most miles. We've gotten the most media. I have spent the most time being a candidate before. I have the most experience being a candidate. This is my third run for office. And I do believe that I present a clear contrast to Donald Trump and Joe Biden in both my rhetoric, my clear age difference. I'm actually generationally different from the two other candidates running for president. And I also think that just, again, my experience being a candidate. I have learned something from every race that I've run. I ran for Congress in 2020 in a special election. I ran statewide in Georgia for Senate in 2022, forcing a runoff between the two candidates, got a lot of national attention for the party. And I did that race utilizing, I was very, very much outspent in resources. I know how to do a lot with very little. And if we're going to have a presidential candidate, we have to be real. We are going to be outspent by the Republicans and Democrats. In my Senate race, it was $250 million is what the Republicans and Democrats combined spent. Their cost per vote was between $20 and $25 per vote. It would be as if they handed each voter a $20 bill, essentially. I got 81,000 votes with just under $20,000 of funding. So that's somewhere in like the 18, 20 cent range, like minuscule. 100th of what they did is what my cost per vote was. So that shows us when we run a energetic and nimble campaign, we can have an outsized impact. We can punch above our weight. And that's one of the things I'm committed to doing, is finding each and every avenue to first put us in the level playing field like I did at the State Fair, but anywhere where we're being outspent or outadvantaged, we have to find those nimble ways to get the voters out there, which is why when I was talking about the marketing strategy earlier of focusing and targeting on likely libertarian voters, we can do that kind of marketing, that kind of digital ad marketing for the fraction of what a traditional ad buy would be on your television screen. And so if there are ways for us to have an outsized impact, punch above our weight, we're identifying them and using them now. I can't speak to what other candidates are doing, but I can speak to the fact that we are getting the most attention in this primary process. And it's not just followers on Twitter, it's newspapers. I just did an interview with Forbes magazine. Like, there are large people paying attention to this because it's not just because I'm a great guy, you guys. It's because our team is running a well-running campaign. And that is what's going to make the difference in 2024. And that's why I encourage you to support me. Yes, sir?
Yeah, two questions.
All right, twofer.
How many three-letter agencies would you get rid of? And have you ever heard of Timcast IRL?
I'll start with the second one. Yes, I've heard of Timcast IRL. It is the have we got him on Joe Rogan of this year? I've heard so many times, go on Timcast, go on Timcast. I would love to go on it. Yeah, I would love to get on there. We'll reach out. We'll reach out to basically any podcast that wants to put our message out there forward. So, and your alphabet agency question. How many alphabet agencies are there? That's my answer. Now, I'm a minarchist, you guys. If I could wave a magic wand, the state would be so small it would fit in the palm of our hand. It would only be a military that's large enough to protect us from sovereign invasion, courts to adjudicate disputes between people, and law enforcement to enforce the laws and protect people's liberty. And only that, not arrest, peaceful people for victimless crimes. And so in my estimation, how many states could I eliminate if I wanted to? Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Yes, sir.
First, I want to say thank you very much for attending LibertyCon. I'm a professor at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. I was there as well with Jim Lark and a few of us other academics.
Great event.
And I think it's phenomenal being able to reach out specifically to the younger individuals, those finishing high school, those at the university level. With many ways, they really are the future of our country. So first, I just want to recognize you for that. I think you're the only candidate that I actually saw there, if I'm not mistaken. But the second part is maybe something that we spoke about, not you and I, but several of us at LibertyCon, as well as other conversations. I think there's some challenges that are occurring at LNC right now with regard to the staff, the direction that the Libertarian Party has taken. I know this is a controversial question, or maybe statement I'm making, but I'm just kind of curious. I think there's some wounds that we have within the party. Do you see ways that maybe we could, ways that we can heal so we could actually have that common message moving forward?
Yes is the short answer to that second question, but I'll start with the very first part. I was at LibertyCon, which is a convention that's held every year by a group called Students for Liberty. Pretty awesome organization. I know lots of great people who work within there. It was a really cool convention. If you've ever wanted to be around like 1,000 young people who are interested in liberty, that's where to go because they're there every year. They're from all over the world. I spoke to Italians and I spoke to a couple Argentinians. Let's just say they were a little excited this year. But, and so it's a wonderful event to reach out to young people. And I believe that's something that I, as a candidate for president, want to focus on, is reaching out to Gen Z for two reasons. One, they're going to be our largest block of voters in 15 years. If we're not planting the seeds right now, we have no crop to harvest in 15 years. You get what I'm saying? So we want to reach out to those voters right here, right now. And the reason that it's best to do it when they're young is because if you can get somebody to vote outside of the two-party system in their first election ever, there's a good chance for the rest of their life they will be looking on the ballot to what all options are on there. They won't be stuck just with Republican and Democrat. It's way easier to get them plugged in now while they're young than have to pull them out of the two-party system and then plug them in when they're in their 30s or 40s. And so I absolutely want to reach out to young people. It's been a focus of my campaign. I've spoken at college events. It's been some of the best feedback I've ever gotten. And let me just tell you a little story about one of my volunteers. His name's Patrick. He's from Florida. Now, he called my campaign, and I happened to have the Google Voice on, so I picked up the phone. He was like, oh my God, it's actually the candidate. And he's like, I'm 16 years old, and I'm a high school student, and I want to work on your campaign because I believe in having a younger voice in our process. Is it okay if I work for you if I also volunteer for Dean Phillips because I really don't like Joe Biden and I want him to get defeated? And I was like, you can volunteer for him too, you can volunteer for me, let's not give each other secrets, but cool, I don't care. But that demonstrated how desperate this young man was to see a younger voice on the stage, to stop having octogenarians being representing the youth of America. Joe Biden in a debate in 2020 said something like, we need to play the records more for our kids. I mean, I like vinyl as much as the next guy, but it seemed a little out of touch. And so I was honored to have young folks like Patrick and so many others on my campaign volunteer staff, and we're going to grow that as we do. I want to do a whole college tour if I'm our nominee, speaking to young people, challenging their notions, breaking them out of the statist mindset that so many of our universities put them into. I spoke to great young people at the University of Washington, Huskies for Liberty. Did you know the University of Washington, of all the public colleges, has the lowest free speech score? I found that out because I met a couple of free speech warriors out in Washington State. I want to help folks just like them. Now, you spoke about the LNC internal stuff. Now, I'm going to say, speaking to internal offices and things like this, I, as a candidate, will not be endorsing anybody for LNC or platform of bylaw changes. I'm going to trust that you, the delegates, are going to do the work of our party and come together in Washington, D.C. and elect an awesome LNC, have some great platform and bylaws, and do all that stuff. I'm going to be focused on the outward work of being a candidate. But part of that is about bringing the party together. And there is infighting. There have been wounds. And let me just say this. I've criticized people in the party before, too. Let he who has ever had a criticism or who has never had a criticism of the Libertarian Party please cast the first stone. All right, we've all, every once in a while, had one problem or another with the party. What we need to do is we need to come together as libertarians under a common framework of principles. This is why I don't speak ill of my opponents. Why? Because one of us is going to be the nominee, and if I just spend all my time, I'm just pulling the name out of hat, crapping on Mike Tremont, he was here, right? He was here yesterday. If I spend all my time crapping on Mike, right, and then he becomes our nominee, well, all the mainstream media has to do is to say, here's all the things fellow libertarian Chase Oliver said about Mike and all the terrible things he said. I'm not going to do the media's dirty work for them. Hell no. I'm going to run a campaign that's focused on me and the message that we're putting out there and not trying to divide libertarians along ideological lines, along caucus lines. I want support from every wing of this party because I hope they can see that I'm an energetic messenger. And I can tell you, spoiler alert, I have gotten support from every wing of this party. I see people from every caucus and every ideology come and saying, hey, you're the best choice for us in 2024. I'm sure that other people say that, other candidates too, again, not speaking bad about them, but it tells me that the message is resonating and that it's a message that can be carried forward by the entire party. I hope we all come together around our candidate in 2024, and I hope we are a stronger, more united party. That's why I am running, is to build that foundation, because we have had so much infighting that I feel like there's cracks in that foundation, and we need to repair it and build upon it. And if we don't, we run the risk, particularly if we don't reach out to young people, of our party aging out of relevancy and no longer being important. I did want to speak to one more thing about that, about keeping our party relevant. I will speak bad about this candidate because he's not a libertarian. Robert Kennedy Jr. has been touring around and toying around and being coy with the Libertarian Party. Let me just say this. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a libertarian. He is not. He's also not a political outsider. If you're looking for a political outsider, rule number one should not be find someone with the last name of Kennedy to support. He is not going to serve our party. And let me just tell you this right now. If he tries to run for our nomination, and by hook or by crook earns it, we don't deserve to exist. Because if we're the Libertarian Party, we best be putting a libertarian on the top of our ticket. And that is not Robert Kennedy Jr. I'll go to you and you next, sir.
Usually by this time of the year, in our election cycle, we have had like at least 2 or 3 people step forward and say, hey, I want to be vice president. I don't think anybody's volunteered for that yet or put themselves forward as a VP candidate. Why do you think that is?
We've had a couple. There are a couple. There's Clint Russell. He is a podcaster. He moderated the Georgia debate. He has said he wants to run VP. Tub Radaba from Florida. He's a pastor, awesome guy. He's a friend of mine. He's also said, I'm willing to run for VP. And then, of course, I'm looking to all the, that's his nickname. That's not his real name. And then I'm looking to all the other candidates who are currently running for president right now, because I imagine some of them are going to probably drop down and want to run for VP if someone else is nominated. And so those are the people I'm vetting right now, as well as there's a couple other people that I'm maybe thinking about contacting, seeing if they're interested. One of the guys I really wanted is already running for another office, and I'm going to endorse him for that instead. So, but there is definite consideration to that. Like, why do I think there's not as many people running for VP? I don't know the exact answer for that, because, the guy who won the VP contest last time was running for VP too. He didn't run for president. He ran for VP, and boy, did he get nominated. So maybe that's the best path for somebody who wants to be running as a running mate, to maybe run for VP instead. Who knows? You, sir.
Yeah, I talked about the NAP.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the NAP.
Sweet. So I'm a big believer in the Declaration of Independence and the principles set forth there. That the proper role of government is to protect life, liberty, or property, and anything more or less than that is usurpation or oppression. And that government is, that it's self-evident that we are free. We don't have to refer to any document or anything to do that. Mm-hmm. The government is only organized in order to protect those things. Mm-hmm. And that if it becomes destructive of those ends, it's our duty to abolish or destroy them. Mm-hmm. Problem comes that when you also believe in the NAP, all the previous efforts to abolish and destroy lead to war and death and violence. And it takes that kind of action in order to actually alter or abolish. Mm-hmm. How do we reconcile those two problems? The one path, in order to follow the Declaration and the standards therein, might lead to war, but we believe in non-aggression.
So I believe the first path we need to take is a peaceful, non-aggressive resistance path. It is something as an Episcopal Christian, it is the way that I had gone about resisting violence in my life. I don't commit more violence. I stand against it. And I was at about 9 months ago. I was in Alabama. I was traveling through the state. And I like to go to church when I can. And I was going to be traveling through a region called the Black Belt. It is a rural area that is majority minority. It's one of the few places in the country that's like this. And my friend Portia Shepard, she's an activist out there, and she's like, hey, Chase, I heard you like to go to church on Sunday. You want to go to church with me? I said, yes, I do. And so I'm there. It's a Black Baptist church. I'm the one white guy in there. Now, that's nothing new to me. I'm from Atlanta. I'm used to being the one white guy in a room. But I stick out like a sore thumb. And we start, and all of a sudden, halfway through, the pastor goes, you may have noticed we have a special guest here in the audience today in the congregation. His name is Chase Oliver, and he's running for president. I was like, I did not want to be acknowledged here. Just came here to worship. And then he goes, and we're going to give him a few minutes after the sermon today to speak to all of y'all. And I nearly crapped myself, because I was not ready to give a speech to a congregation. And so I'm just thinking in my head, like, what can I say? What can I say? And then I realized I need to speak to that audience. And I talked a little bit about who I was. And I said, I support the ideas of freedom. And when I say I fight for freedom, I don't mean I physically fight. I mean I stand up and resist tyranny. And I want to talk about that to a few of the people who are here in this room, because this church was, the average age was about 60 or 70. They were an older congregation. And I said, people ask me all the time, how are you going to fight for freedom without violence, Chase? When has that ever worked? It's worked in the South, where I'm from. In that room in Alabama, there are people who are part of a generation who stood up and fought back against state-sanctioned tyranny called Jim Crow. And they didn't do it by fighting a war or being violent. They did that by standing up and practicing peaceful, nonviolent resistance. And what happened? The government was violent against them. Police batons, fire hoses, sicking the dogs on them. But the American people saw that violence from the state, and they realized how immoral and disgusting it was. and it galvanized a population to tear down Jim Crow. And I'll tell you right now, if I have to take a fire hose to fight for liberty, I will do it. If I have to take an attack dog taking me down because I'm standing up for liberty, so be it. But I believe that peaceful nonviolence resistance is the true way to liberty. It's the true way to change people's minds and hearts. And war is a last resort, and violence always should be. And that's something that's come to me from my ethics, from my faith, and from my practice as a politician. And as a candidate for president, that will be the kind of change I advocate for libertarians to fight. Fight using the legal means, the fight using everything we can to peacefully, passively stand up against the violence of the state. And if we all do that together, we will win in the end. But we have to be the examples for people to be galvanized from. And so that's the kind of libertarian candidate I'm going to be, is one who respects the non-aggression principle and puts it into practice as an activist and a candidate for president. I appreciate your question. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Now, you talked a bit about your anti-war stance and background, and I've recently, become an anti-war advocate. So I was just wondering, how would you kind of go about dismantling the military-industrial complex? As the great Ron Paul said, you could defend this country with a couple of good submarines. How would you get us out of the two proxy wars we're involved in right now? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
So, it's just so easy. It's just an easy thing, a wave of a wand. No, the first thing we have to do is we have to change what our foreign policy is, our focus of foreign policy, which for the last 25 years has been militarism. It's been our way or the highway. If you're not with us, you're with the terrorists, and we will go to war in your communities. And it's led to so much bloodshed. And I imagine, I urge people to imagine if the shoe were on the other foot. Imagine, right, if there's a computer programmer in California who's doing things that the government of China doesn't like, and they say, well, he's hacking or he's doing something wrong, and so they shoot a drone bomb into his apartment building. It kills him, but it also kills the surrounding 30 people who are closest to him in that apartment building. Would we just say, you know what, that's the price of war. That's what we got to do. That's what we got to do to take out terrorists. Would we be accepting that? No, we wouldn't. But we demand that the people of Syria, the people of Iraq, the people of Afghanistan, and everywhere else we do drone bombings must accept this as the status quo. I refuse to accept that as the status quo. And so it first comes with changing our viewpoint on about what we should be doing and how we should be interacting with our neighbors. And that involves free trade and diplomacy, like actually talking to them, breaking down barriers to trade. Because let me tell you right now, I worked in maritime trade for 6 years. I saw how interconnected our markets are. When you're trading with people, you're not going to war with them. This is also, by the way, why I don't fear war with China. As much as the military-industrial complex is trying to rattle that saber here at home, we are never going to war with China. Our economies are too dependent upon one another. If we went to war, it would mutually assure our economic destruction on both sides. But why is that saber being rattled? Because the military-industrial complex wants to build more weapon systems. They want to pass more spending because they want to scare the American people to think we're going to go to war in Taiwan. The wars that we're fighting overseas, we need to remove ourselves from. We need to close the bases. We need to remove our military footprint from everywhere that isn't the United States of America. And ideally, that's where I would go. As far as removing ourselves from the proxy wars we're fighting, I'm going to start with Ukraine, and I'll go to the Israel conflict. I don't believe we should be involving ourselves in the military solution to Ukraine. If the nations of Europe want to arm themselves, defend themselves against Russian encroachment, they're the ones who are most directly threatened. I encourage them to do whatever they feel they want to do as their nations, but we should not be involved in that. I would rather ourselves be involved in the humanitarian response to the war. We should be saying anybody who wants to come over here, who wants to get out of the war zone, should be able to come here as a refugee to the United States. That includes people who are conscripted in the military. I just spoke with 2 people the other night in Minnesota, 2 young men who had to flee Russia because they were being conscripted into Putin's army. They didn't want to go fight and kill Ukrainians. So I would allow those people like that to come in right in on an asylum claim. You should not have to fight in a moral war on either side, frankly, that you don't want to fight. And it's also why I oppose the draft here in the United States, too. I think it's immoral to conscript people into war. Neither here nor there. But I would seek to use our humanitarian solution in Ukraine as opposed to a military one, because we've been exercising militarism around the world the last 24 years. Have we gotten safer? Is there more stability? Is the United States more trusted and loved around the world? No. So let's try something new. Let's try a humanitarian response. Well, with Israel, October 7th was disgustingly horrible. It was a horrible thing to happen to the people of Israel. I think if any of us, if we saw people coming into the neighborhoods of St. Louis and killing 1,400 innocent people, we would rightfully be outraged and we would demand some sort of response. Just like we did after 9/11, right? We were all angry, we wanted a response. I wish someone had come to us on 9/12/2001 and said, listen, America, we're your friend. We love you. We want to see you safe and secure. But this policy of going to war around the world, it's not going to solve that. It's not going to make you safer. It's not going to make the world more stable. It's not going to end terrorism. You have to find a different path to take. Unilateral war is not the way to go. Undeclared war is not the path to take. I wish someone had said that on 9/12/2001. I wish we, as an ally to Israel, had said on October 8th, Israel, I know you're hurting. I know you've seen so many innocents harmed. I know tensions are high. But the policy of airstriking as a response that kills tens of thousands of innocent people is wrong. It is immoral. And is providing more danger for the average Israeli. It's making it more dangerous to live in Israel. It's creating more tension in the region and ultimately will create more violence. This is not the path. If we were truly Israel's ally, that's what we would have said to them on October 8th instead of saying, you can unconditionally have whatever military hardware you want to blow up people in Gaza. That is the moral response to war, to stand up and be better and demand peace. And if I were president of the United States, that's the exact message I would have given to Benjamin Netanyahu on October the 8th. That you need to do this in a way that is, you're going to respond. No one will say you're not going to. But you must do so in a way that is surgical and precise to not kill innocent lives in Gaza, to not create a humanitarian and refugee crisis, to not shove them further and further south towards Rafah, where you're still bombing. All of that is immoral. And if we're truly going to be an ally to Israel, we have to be man enough to say that to them. Because anything else is capitulation of the warfare state, and I refuse it. Yes, sir.
After you're elected, what steps would you take to help foster the Libertarian Party for the next election?
If I'm elected president, well, we're going to hopefully have some Libertarian Congress people and senators elected alongside with me to have my back. But let's say a miracle occurs and I am the only Libertarian who's elected in the federal level and I'm just the president out there. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is start identifying winnable Libertarian races in the Congress and start supporting those candidates to win in 2026. Because if you don't have a Congress that can have your back, it's really hard to be effective as a candidate for president. But I believe even if I don't win, we can foster help for the party. So even if I don't win the White House, those metrics of victory that I'm talking about, like securing ballot access, in my home state of Georgia, ballot access is ridiculous. And right now, there's a good possibility that the only race we have to secure ballot access is our president and vice presidential candidate. And if we don't get that, we have to go right back to the drawing board in the state of Georgia. I don't want to see that in any state. I want to see us improve our stake in every state. Because when we have ballot access, it is easier to convince good people to run for office. They don't have the expense of having to go collect tens of thousands of signatures and spend all that money. They can just put that right into getting right involved in the campaign, getting those yard signs going, getting out there and paying the filing fees or whatever they need to do. So if we can help ballot access, that's going to help facilitate growth. Same with major party status, because we get increased notice from the media and other groups. That increases visibility for libertarians. You get more debate invites, things like this, that allows us one-on-one. I got to debate a sitting U.S. Senator one-on-one because the Republican was too cowardly to go to the debate. But I got to sit there and tell a sitting U.S. Senator truths of power that it's a shame that he can't even read the bills that he votes on. And he couldn't even admit that he doesn't read the bills. So that is something we can do with major party status, get that increased visibility. And of course, if we can double our membership. So many people, how many people here have done work for the Libertarian Party and they've gotten burnt out one time or another? If we had twice as many members, twice as many activists, that burnout would subside with a lot of our members. And we could actually find ourselves doing a lot more things. And so why am I so committed to growing that number and holding it for 4 years? Is because I know if we can hold that membership number for 4 years and really grow from the grassroots, we're going to be far more successful over the next 10 or 20 years. But if we keep doing what we do every 4 years, we grow a little bit and then we drop off. We grow a little bit and then we drop off. That policy of just going up and down, we've been doing it for 52, 53 years now, and we're still in startup mode. We need to build the foundation to get our party out of startup mode. Yes, sir.
I got a question based on an email I got from Libertarian National today that we've got a handful of states that you don't have ballot access to. Unless I misread the email, like New Hampshire, New Mexico, they need money. Are we on all 50 states? Is that going to be an impediment to you?
We are not currently on all 50 state ballots. We are having to do ballot drives to get ourselves on as many states as possible. It's looking like right now, with some basic hard work, just the basic stuff we're doing, 48 is easy to get. There are 2 states that are really increasingly difficult. That's Illinois and New York. They have shortened requirement times. They have larger numbers to get. Particularly New York is going to be the most challenging. I'm committed to trying to be on the ballot in all 50 states. And here's the truth. Even if I'm not on the ballot in all 50 states, libertarians will be on the ballot in all 50 states. And it's important for us as a candidate for president to make sure I'm supporting those candidates. Even if it's a state where I'm not on the ballot, if there's a New York winnable race, I will travel out there and knock on doors if I need to. But I would like to be on all 50 state ballots. It's going to require a huge amount of effort. I know there's going to be work underway to get that done. I encourage anybody who has the time to get up to New York and help collect signatures, please do it. Please do it. Yes, sir.
Actually, being here in Missouri, the place that you can really help is across the border into Illinois.
Yes.
And I know that there are going to be efforts to organize carpools from Iowa, from Indiana, and hopefully from Missouri and from Wisconsin to help push the Illinois drive over to the top so that we can concentrate all the paid efforts, as much of the paid efforts as possible in New York.
Steve is exactly right. Illinois is way closer to y'all than New York. So actually, I'm going to try to goad y'all. So now I can guilt y'all even easier because, it's just a car ride to get to Illinois now. You don't have to fly on any planes or anything. You don't have to deal with the TSA, none of that nonsense. You can just get in a car with your friends and go out and help secure ballot access in Illinois. Because the people of Illinois deserve to have a libertarian candidate for president on their ballot. And it'd be a damn shame if we did, whether it's me or anybody else. And I'm committing myself to getting out there and knocking on doors for ballot access too. Because frankly, if I'm our nominee, I kind of have a self-interest in getting that done. So expect me to get out there and knock on doors alongside you too. But yeah, get involved. And I would love, I'm not just going to tell y'all what to do, no aggression, no forcing anything, but if the Libertarian Party of Missouri were to kind of create some sort of carpool event to help out their neighbors in Illinois, I'm sure the Libertarians of Illinois would graciously accept that help and, maybe even feed you or something. I don't know. But I'm sure there's some deals that can be made between the 2 states. Let's get something done. It'd be awesome to see. Yes, sir.
Just some information along that line. My wife and I, last cycle, went to the Belleville Arts Festival, and that's in Illinois, and it's a good place to get signatures. I think it's in May. You can look it up, but we got quite a few signatures there.
Festivals are great places to get signatures. I was at an art festival in Idaho, Boise, Idaho, one of the reddest states in the country, and we collected over 2,000 signatures for medical cannabis during the weekend I was there. So festivals are definitely a great place to go out and get those ballot access signatures. And you also have the added benefit of being at an art festival. You can buy some art for the walls, If you got the money for it. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am?
Can you speak a little bit more to your thoughts on the economy and what libertarians to do to turn around the economy?
Well, the libertarian answer, of course, is in the Fed. We want to get ourselves back to a sound monetary policy one day. I believe that our money should be backed by something, whether it's gold, silver, saffron, whatever you want to tie it to something that has an intrinsic value that's worth something, not just this fiat currency out there. But that's going to require long-term thinking, long-term working, which is why I focus so much on balancing our budget, because it is a great way to get the idea that government prints so much trillions of dollars out of thin air every year in a way that makes sense to the average American. The average American does not know what the Fed does or what monetary policy is or any of that stuff, any of that nerdy stuff that us libertarians love to talk about and read books about and watch podcasts about and all that stuff. For them, hearing balance the budget makes sense to them because they say, I balance my household budget every month. And if I don't, I go into debt and I have to pay that debt off. Well, we are doing the exact same thing. And so I think getting ourselves back to a balanced budget and actually getting ourselves to a budget surplus every year would be nice. But ideally, I would like us to be taxed only enough to pay for the revenue, and we keep cutting the state down and keep cutting our taxes down. And what's a great way for the United States to pay off a lot of its debt? Well, what do you do when you're in debt? You sell off some of your assets to pay for that. We got a whole lot of federal land out there that we can start selling piece by piece and start taking down some of this debt without increasing anyone's taxes. And so that would be a great way to start tearing down the debt, improving our economy for the long term. And then a lot of this stuff comes down to getting the government out of the way of ways like getting the government out of zoning for housing. Why is housing so expensive? Because we don't build enough houses. I live in the city of Atlanta. Let me just tell you right now, our rent prices are insanely crazy. And why is this? Because the city government has done such a bad job of zoning out affordable housing and the ability to build multi-unit housing in the areas because NIMBYs, it'll affect our property values. We don't want it. I always tell people all the time, what affects your property values worse? Having some multi-unit homes near you or having homeless people on the street near you? Like, what is more unattractive to you as a home buyer when you're driving around, seeing that people are secure and safe in a home or watching people who are dying in the street? What is better for you as a homeowner? And so we can do things like getting rid of zoning restrictions. We can do things like removing the burden of taxation, regulation, and costs, removing fees from people. There are so many things we can do to take the state out of people's lives that improves their economic lot that really, if we're being frank about it, the state wouldn't miss it all. One of the things I use as an example all the time, just a useless BS fee. When I was a waiter for years, and every year that I was a waiter, I had to pay Gwinnett County $40 a year for a pouring permit. Did they measure my ability to pour beer or that I was competent to pour beer? No. They just said, if you want to pour beer, you have to pay the state $40 a year. And so little fees like that add up. There was a $150 fee to be a fortune teller. They didn't see it coming. But but that's the truth. Like, why do you need $150 to read tarot for somebody? Like, why do you have to pay the state to do that? And so there are so many areas locally, really, is where a lot of that stuff comes from that we can tear out of the state and improves people's economic lives. But it just comes down to government's got to stop printing trillions of dollars. And every time we do it, it just eats into the value of every person's savings. And another thing is we need to improve our economy by ending tariffs and trade barriers. Here's the truth. China does not pay those tariffs. We pay the tariffs. American business consumers do. American businesses do. Individuals do. Tariffs are a tax on every single American household. We need to get rid of them and quit insisting that we fight trade wars with China, because the truth is in trade wars, everyone loses. In free trade, the best win, the losers fall and subside and get liquidated, and their assets get taken up by somebody else to reallocate in a better way. It's this thing called the free market, and I trust the trillions of individual market decisions that you, me, and everybody else will make over the centrally planned decisions of state houses in Washington, D.C. Yes, sir. Intellectual property what? And right for repayment. Right to repair. Oh. So intellectual property laws, I do believe if you create something, you should be able to profit off of it. But I think what we've had in this country is an abuse of IP laws. We've had people holding copyrights and things like this for way longer than they need to. Mickey Mouse is a great example. But there's a lot of areas where IP law is abused. But I do believe fundamentally, if you create something, you should be able to own that and profit off of that. It is your creation. And so it's a weird, murky area. But in regards to right to repair, I absolutely believe if you buy the tractor, you should be able to have anybody who you want to fix the tractor. And so I do kind of support right to repair, the idea of right to repair, in that if you buy the property, you own it. If you lease it, if you're leasing it, you are under the auspices of what that company wants you to do. And if they say you have to get repaired by a certain organization or certain people, you're leasing them. But if you buy the thing outright, it's yours. You should be able to do whatever the hell you want with it, regardless of what the state says. And so I support the idea that farmers and anybody else when I hear right to repair, I usually am talking to farmers. That's usually where this comes into the auspices about. But I think if you buy it, it's yours. Do whatever you want with it. And it ends up breaking because you don't use the people who are using the correct software or other things like that. That's your mistake. You've made it. Now you have a useless tractor. That's your fault. Yes, ma'am.
Selling off assets and land in the United States, foreign land in the United States.
Well, I believe I, as an American, can go buy land in a lot of other places. I don't necessarily outright say we shouldn't allow foreigners to buy land in the United States. And here's the thing. People are fearing, because China is buying large swaths of agricultural land. And they fear what would happen. They're like, well, what happens if China does this? Here's the truth. If we go to war with China, do you think we're just going to be like, you know what? We're going to give up Kansas because you bought it. No, we're absolutely going to defend our sovereignty on our borders. Just because you own land or purchase property does not mean that, you can just, you can't just uproot the land that you take and take it back over to China. It's still here. In fact, I think encouraging foreign investment in a lot of our firms actually reaffirms our market relationships with other people and actually can, over the long term, actually lead to more peace with peaceful trade. I don't want to restrict trade. I don't want to restrict people from being able to buy property. I certainly wouldn't want to be restricted from me buying property somewhere else. And I think those barriers are actually bad. Where they exist for the United States, we should insist that they be knocked down for others, because what's good for them should be good for us too. I should be able to go buy land in China. But I don't want to facilitate trade wars by saying, they don't let us do it there, so we can't have free trade here. We should be an example. But I'm not scared. A lot of people are fearing that land is being bought up by China, farmland. I don't have those same fears, because the reason why they're buying that land is because there's a profit motive behind it. They're going to make money. Business owners will make money. And eventually, of course, that goes right back to the CCP. But ultimately, I believe that I don't think China's long term to be a communist nation over the next 50 years. I think there's going to be some sort of revolt over time, and free markets are going to rule there. But that's not for me to say. As far as buying property, if you got the money and the seller wants to sell it, that's all that matters to me. The government, the state should stay out of the way.
Isn't there a mindset amongst most voters, I'd say, in this country that is about fear of something bad happening? That all these immigrants coming across from Rio Grande so we're in other countries bombing and doing all sorts of nasty things. Our CIA is over who knows where. It's all based on fear, and it just seems to build on itself. How do you?
That's by design. We're being conditioned to be afraid because those in power know it's easier to control a frightened population. If you're scared of something, it's so much easier for someone in power to go, I will protect you. And you'll go, thank you, because I'm scared. That's just naturally how psychologically you feel. We need to encourage people to not be afraid. I am not afraid of immigrants. Will there be some crime that comes across the border? Yes, but there's also some crime that already exists here too. And in fact, if you look at statistics, immigrants, both legal and illegal, commit a lower frequency of crimes than native-born people. And so when we start breaking down people's perceptions, we can break down their fear by coming to them with logic and with a message that is hopeful and inspiring and can break them out of that notion of fear.
So if the checkpoints at the border are open for business, there's no reason for anybody to risk their life crossing through the deserts.
Exactly.
So if they're crossing through they've got ulterior motives. But
if we allow for an Ellis Island style of immigration where anybody who's peacefully wants to come through, declare who they are, and go through a quick check to make sure they're not wanted for a crime or extradition, and then come right on through and work, you're right. What can we then place our focus on? Not the 99.9% of people who just want to come here and work, but the people who are seeking to bring people or other things through here for human exploitation, human trafficking. And if we hyper-focus our law enforcement at the border on that, we can better address that issue. But right now, it's like we're trying to find a needle in a haystack with our border patrol and with the way law enforcement works on the border. If we had a much more open and ease of immigration system, we could really hyper-focus on those who are trying to do crime. And that would be harming people through trafficking or other things. We also remove the profit motive for the coyotes. It's the same reason why do we want to end the drug war? Because we believe peaceful people should be able to determine their own behavior, control their own body, and it removes the profit motive for the cartels south of our border who are creating so much violence that's dragging people up here. Much of the reason why we have so many people coming across the Rio Grande is because our drug war and our drug policies have created so much violence for them at home that there's no way for them to create a market at home. There's no way for them to create success or prosperity at home. And so they go towards a place where there is success and prosperity. And for the time being, and I hope forever, that's us. And I would like it to remain that way. I would like us to remain a beacon of freedom and of liberty for people around the world. But you're right. We need to quit working with fear-based politics and break through with fear, with logic, with compassion and empathy, and a message that is positive. This is why it's important to have a libertarian candidate people can vote for and not just someone for us to vote against, right? This is why we can't just be a protest vote. We have to be a messenger of something that's better than what we have today. Yes, sir. What is Aleppo? It's coming to me. It's a city in Syria. Thank you. Now, so just a side note, I got a Christmas gift from my roommate this year. It was a pair of gloves, and they were from a brand called Aleppo. And I said, "What is Aleppo gloves? What makes them Aleppo?" But yeah, we have to be ready for those kinds of questions and be prepared to answer them. And one of the things that I think really screwed up that response was just the failure to prepare for that interview, knowing that let me just be frank with you. I know this is a libertarian. When I'm getting interviewed by mainstream media, I'm expecting the gotcha questions. I'm expecting them to try to ask something to trip me up. That's why in my debate, we suddenly got questions about Veterans Affairs when Veterans Affairs had never been a political topic at all during the Senate race. But of course, who do they ask about Veterans Affairs? Not the sitting U.S. Senator who has anything to do with Veterans Affairs. They asked me about it thinking I wasn't going to know the answer. And lo and behold, I had an answer for them because I had been practiced for that. I'm very practiced in debate prep. I did flashcard debate. I had 2 consultants come down and stay with me. And they would ask me a question, and I had a stopwatch, and as soon as 60 seconds hit, I would stop answering the question, and another question would already be being asked of me before I even had a chance to think, wipe my brow, anything. They prepared me, so that way when I got on a stage and questions were being asked rather slowly by comparison, no stress at all. So proper preparation helps. Yes, sir.
You made several references to your church-going habits. What's your position on the abortion issue?
This is a contentious issue among libertarians. I am pro-choice. I do believe that bodily autonomy ultimately has play there. It doesn't mean I want more abortion in the world. I want less abortions in the world. But I think there are ways to do that without outlawing the practice, arresting doctors or women altogether. You can do things like making birth control over the counter so anybody can access ease of contraception. We can do that by increasing the avenues and decreasing the regulation and red tape around adoption so we can get more adoptions happening, so more people who maybe become pregnant without wanting to be pregnant can see adoption as as an avenue that's worthwhile for them, that they see that there can be a possible chance for their child to be adopted out. There's lots of things we can do that would prevent abortion, more increased education, obviously. But I don't believe in outlawing the practice because I do believe ultimately, up to the point of viability, it is the bodily autonomy of the woman at stake. After the point of viability, unless life of the mother is at stake, I do believe that at that point it shouldn't be going forward. So I go by the standard set by Roe and Casey, and that's kind of where I personally place myself. But I have no qualms. If you are a pro-life libertarian, I want to represent you as well. I know this might be an issue we disagree on, but ultimately it's not an issue to where, and I don't believe the state should be involved at all. I'm also a supporter of the Hyde Amendment. I don't believe federal money should be going to fund abortion via Planned Parenthood or anywhere else. And when pro-choice people hear that from me, they go, "Oh my God, you hate Planned Parenthood." Here's the truth. If Planned Parenthood removed all their taxpayer money today, they'd put an email out tomorrow saying, "We lost all our taxpayer funding. We need to raise X number of dollars." They'd raise it very quickly. They could do that privately. They don't need our taxpayer money to do it. And so while I am pro-choice, support the Roe and Casey standards of viability, I also support the Hyde Amendment that says if you are pro-life, your tax money should be taken out of your pocket to go fund abortion. And thank you for that totally not controversial question. No. Yes, sir. Ooh, go-to song my playlist. Right now, I have a few things. Somebody asked me my favorite song the other day, and I said Master of Puppets from Metallica, just because I love really fast, really hard rock. But I'll be honest, I've mellowed out a little bit as I've gotten older, and I've really gotten to a lot more country and bluegrass, kind of back to my Tennessee roots. Tyler Childers, I don't know, Childers. Love that guy. He's so good. He's on my radio. He is one of my regular radio listens. And now he's also, if you guys ever catch me with a few drinks with me, you'll hear me singing him or Johnny Cash. Those are my go-to karaoke's. So Johnny Cash is also quite regularly playing because I like to sing in the car. Yes, sir.
Any advice on fundraising local? Like our
Yeah, so local fundraising. So first you have to be unabashed to ask people. If you're giving a speech and you're not asking for donations, you didn't finish giving the speech. You have to ask for donations at some point. It's the most uncomfortable part of it. Steve can tell you right now, my least favorite thing to do is call donors. I do not like doing fundraising calls. I'd much rather just call people and talk about their day or hear about what's going on in their life and ask them for money, but it is a necessity. We have to do that as a candidate. One of the things that I encourage you to do is find those issues that really resonate in your community and speak to those issues. I always tell local candidates, like, you're running for state house or you're running for county commission. What's your biggest issue? And if they go, "In the Fed," I go, no. If you were elected to the county commission, you could literally do zero jack all to end the Fed. What will you do if you are elected to your office to improve the lives of your community? If you're running for like city council, that can be something as like, I'm tired of the cracks in the sidewalk. Now I know my roads, we don't like to spend money on infrastructure, But if it's going to get spent, it better be spent at least wisely, transparently, and through a no-bid process, right? That allows private organizations to do that work. It can be as much as like, and one of the things I recommend for local people is go. Like if you're running for county commission, start attending your county commission meetings, because I guarantee you at least at every meeting there will be one guy that gets up on the microphone and is like, I can't stand all of you. You're all terrible. You're screwed up my life. I don't like what you're doing. And this is X, Y, and Z, Y. That's the person you want to meet in the back of the room and say, by the way, I'm running for county commission. I'd love to talk to you about your concerns. That is a great way to get a donation out of somebody. If somebody who has been complaining to the county for months and months and months finally feels heard by somebody, they are very likely to give you their money and their support as a volunteer. So I recommend if you're running for State House, start attending State House committee meetings, particularly the one that the person you're running against is going to be chairing or a member of. Attend those meetings. Pay attention to those votes. And when you see people who are upset about the way the person you're running against votes, that's the person you want to talk to in the back of the room saying, I wouldn't have voted that way. I support freedom and liberty, free from the state, and this is what we would have done, and I would really like your support. And that's how you have to find those. Find the first people you want to find, the most passionate people, and those are the people who actually go to those meetings. That's the great way to start your grassroots building up of your campaign team and to start getting your donor network. Because once you get that donation from them, you say, you got any friends? You got any family? Let me talk to them. And that's how you start growing. And then lastly, you must knock on doors. You must, if you're a local candidate, knock on the doors of your constituency. I worked through 3 pairs of shoes knocking on doors running for U.S. Senate. It takes just over 1,000 doors for you to work through a pair of shoes, because it was around 3,000 doors for the entire year. So you don't have that many doors if you're running locally, thank God. Trust me, it's a nuisance. But you want to get out and you want to knock on those doors, and if someone is not home, do not just leave your flyer. Have a sticky note pad with you and say, I'm Chase Oliver, I'm running for city council, and you weren't home, but I'd really like to hear your opinion. Here's my home phone or my cell phone number. Please call me. You will get so much of a better response rate if you do that on the homes that aren't occupied, if nobody answers the door, than if you just leave your flyer there. Take the extra step to connect with those people, because they will see the effort and they'll say, no Republican or Democrat's ever knocked on my door asking me what I feel. Certainly hasn't left me his phone number. So those are the things I would do to encourage you to run locally. And if you're a local candidate and I'm a presidential candidate, if I'm traveling to this area of Missouri where you're running, you better be ready to knock on doors, because I'll get you up and I'll make you knock on doors, because I don't like paper candidates. I like people who want to work hard. And to that end, by the way, if you are a candidate running for office and you'd like say, hey, I would love Chase's endorsement. You have an endorsement tab on my website. You can click on it, you can fill out that information. It will eventually get a phone call with me where we can talk about these things. But here's the main things that I look for if you want my endorsement. 1, are you committed to running a race, like actually knocking on the doors, doing that work, and getting out there? 2, are you committed, or do you know your win number? Do you know the number you would need to win this race? Whether it's winning outright, winning ballot access, whatever your goal is, you need to know your win number before you talk to me, because I need to know you're serious about running. And 3rd, you need to come to me with 2 or 3 issues that relate back to your campaign. So that way when I endorse you, I can say, he's doing X, Y, and Z for the people of Missouri. I want to be able to know that stuff so I can sell you to the public. So if you are a candidate, and several people intimated they wanted to be a candidate over the next year, please go to the endorsement tab, sign up, let's have a conversation and see if we can get things going. I see I'm near the end of my time here. I'll give you my last bit, y'all. This is my elevator pitch. All right? If you're living your life in peace and you're not committing force, fraud, coercion, theft, or violence, your life is your life, your body is your body, your property is your property, and your business is your business, not the government's. Not no way, not no how. Period. Your life is yours, and you own it. No one else should.